Hello, biology. All right. This was the bell work on the 21st for 7th hour, but the 20th for 3rd hour. So if you're looking at this just to get the bell work, this might be wrong. So 21st for 7th hour, but the 20th for 3rd hour. Other than that, this is correct. So these are the enzymes notes. Before I start, I want to go ahead and mention something so that I don't forget to do it at the end of the video. The school had some internet issues this week. Those of you who were here were quite familiar with those. They were extremely frustrating. Because of that, we did this one day, and then the next day we did not finish enzymes because the rest of enzymes is an internet-based slides activity. So rather than try and struggle through the no internet thing that we've been dealing with, we went ahead and skipped ahead to some transport notes, which is what the next two videos are going to be over. That is what we went through the rest of this week because of those internet issues. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. We will come back to enzymes next week, Thursday, 3rd hour, Monday, 3rd hour, we'll come back to enzymes and start that activity unless there's there's more internet issues, network issues going on. 7th hour, we'll do the same on Tuesday. So just a little bit of a summary on what's coming up next week. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll start on these notes. The video is linked in the description. It's an Amoeba Sisters video, and it just gives you a lot of really handy visuals for the stuff that I'm going to go through. So that said, let's get started. This first slide is a direct link to the Amoeba Sisters video that I mentioned. So if for some reason I forget to do that, here it is. But this is where the notes actually start. Okay, so I'm assuming you've already watched the video. So if you haven't done that yet, you might want to. Okay, catalyst is not part of your notes. This is a definition as a starting point. Okay, catalyst is anything that speeds up or promotes or accelerates something like that to a reaction without changing itself. An enzyme is basically just a biological catalyst. Okay, it binds with a substrate, it forces that substrate through a reaction that would normally happen anyway. It just makes it happen much faster, and then it releases the products, binds to another substrate, and does it again, and again, and again, and again. But the enzyme itself never actually changes over the course of that reaction. Now, the main way that they manage to pull that off is by lowering what's called the activation energy. So, every reaction has a certain amount of energy that has to be input into that reaction before it can actually take place. So, for example, the one that they use in the video is lactose and lactase. So, before lactose can actually break down into its two simple sugars that it's made of, it has to have a certain amount of energy put into it before it can actually break that bond. You have to put energy in to break that thing. Well, that amount of energy, that required energy, is called the activation energy. And it's usually going to look something like this. So you have to have a spike in energy. When you get to the right point, the reaction will take place. This is your activation energy. Now, what an enzyme does is it allows this reaction to happen at a lower energy. So your activation energy is significantly lower than it would otherwise be. So by lowering that energy, your body doesn't have to exert as much energy in order to get the same results. Another way to think of it would be pushing a rock up a hill or dragging a sled up a hill. You have to put some amount of work in to get it to the top of the hill. Then, once you're at the top, you can push it over the edge and it's just going to go. But you have to put in the energy to get it to the top of the hill before it will actually go on its own. That's like the activation energy. So if you're carrying this rock, then it's going to be a lot more work. But if you put the rock on a sled, then the work becomes much easier. You can get it to the top with a lot less effort, but still end up with the same result. You can throw the rock down the hill, if you're a person who likes throwing rocks down hills, I guess. But that's the best example I've been able to come up with. So there's one for you. Hope that helps. Some enzymes will cause things to come together. Most enzymes are breaking things down. In fact, just about every enzyme that we talk about is going to be one that's breaking stuff down. So very rarely does an enzyme actually accelerate a composition reaction. It's usually decomposition reactions that they're speeding up. All right, and this is just basically saying what I just said. It speeds up those functions without having to raise the temperature. And I did not actually mention this part. The way we usually get to this activation energy is we have to increase the temperature of the material that we're trying to get to react. So as we spend energy warming it up, it eventually hits that activation energy and the reaction goes. But it takes a lot of effort to raise the energy, or to raise the temperature. So by using an enzyme, we don't have to actually increase that temperature quite so much. So that saves our bodies on some of the energy that we would otherwise have to use. All right, so this is a little graphic kind of explaining what's going on. And we're using the Pac-Man example from the video for this, obviously. So an enzyme has a specific shape on its outside for where it can bond to some substrate. So, for example, if this was lactase, it has a shape designed so that only lactose can bond here. And that location is called the activation site. Sorry, the active site. The active site is where the substrate bonds to the enzyme so that the enzyme can do what it needs to. Okay, whether that be building it up or breaking it down. Okay, and the next slide says everything that I just said, so I will scroll to that next. So again, this just kind of says what I just did. The lock and key system is referring to how it can only bind with one specific thing. So one enzyme can only bind with one specific substrate. It cannot bind with any other substrate. Okay? And they fit together like a lock and a key. Only the proper key will open the lock. So only the proper substrate can bind to the enzyme. Now, here's one that people tend to forget about. An enzyme can only work one kind of reaction. It can only perform one specific reaction. So lactase binds to lactose, and it breaks it down into the same two things every time. It will never bind with anything else, and it will never perform any other reaction. Lactase will never bind with 2-lactose and cause them to come together to form a polysaccharide instead of a disaccharide. That can't happen because that's not how the enzyme is designed to function. Okay? An enzyme is kind of like someone on an assembly line. They perform one task and they do it exactly the same every time. Just over and over and over and over. It never changes. They just do the same thing every time. It will never occasionally put the back door on instead of the bumper. They're going to do the same thing every time. Okay, the enzyme is not changed. They work extremely fast, as you can see here. And then the names, as they said in the video, usually it's going to end in ASE. Now, I mentioned that the enzyme itself is never actually changed over the course of the reaction. Theoretically, an enzyme can work for just about forever. But there are things that can be done to it that will damage it. And this is one of the reasons why we cook stuff, to break down stuff like this. When you damage an enzyme and it can no longer fulfill its function, it's called denaturation, or a denatured enzyme. A denatured enzyme has been heated up to the point where it has warped, or it has been exposed to the incorrect pH, which has caused it to dissolve or break down in some way. And what this ultimately means is that its shape has been changed to where it cannot bind with what it's supposed to bind with anymore. So note it says specifically heat, not extreme temperature change. Cooling it down will slow the enzyme, but it will not actually denature it. If there is an enzyme in the presence of water, and the water freezes, then the water can cause the enzyme to denature because it can actually form very, very sharp crystals, and those crystals can actually shred or tear apart the enzyme. And so that will cause the enzyme to become denatured, but the cold itself won't do it. It's the water freezing that causes the enzyme to break down. So something worth keeping in mind. Cold does not denature an enzyme, only heat and the wrong pH. Because remember, pH is how acidic or basic it is. A high pH is basic, a low pH is acidic, and then 7 is neutral. Some enzymes work best in acidic pHs, some work best in basic pHs. So when they are in the wrong pH, if a basic pH or a basic enzyme is put into your stomach, for example, which is highly acidic, it will break that enzyme down. It will denature it to where it can't fulfill its purpose anymore. Okay, this was an assignment. Everybody was to, on a white sheet of paper, draw this and label the enzyme, the substrate, and the active site, and then take a picture of it and insert it into your notes at this point. So, wrong mouse. Here, after this, you need to insert this image into your notes. Okay, and that was something they got class time to do. It only took like a minute or two to get it done. So I'm just going to go ahead to the next slide. Which is a practice quiz. Note the word practice. Now I was going to create a Google form for this, but since all the questions were already in the slideshow, I decided we just do this as a class. So I'm going to go through this. I want you to write down the question and the answers so that you can check yourself at the end of this. There's 6 questions. I just want you to go through and answer them real quick, and at the end of the video, I'll give you the answers. So, question 1, and I'm just gonna kind of roll through these because you can pause it while you answer. Question 2, which one is the true statement, or which one makes a true statement? Question 3, question 4, 5, and 6. Now for this one, what I want you to do is I want you to write down purple, red, and blue. Tell me what the purple one is called, tell me what the red section is called, and tell me what the blue one is called. And those are the answers. I would recommend, if you can, take a picture of this and put this in your notes as well, because this actually points out the products. And this is a better example than the Pac-Man example from earlier. So a substrate comes in, binds to the active site, which has the perfect shape to fit it. And then the enzyme actually rips it apart right here and releases the two products. This is what's happening most of the time. I don't know why I backed off screen. That's it for this video. This is it. This is all we've done in enzymes so far. I will eventually, of course, go back to enzymes. Like I said, next week, Monday, 3rd hour, we'll go back to the enzymes activity, the slides activity. 7th hour, we'll wait until Tuesday, but they will be doing the same thing. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys are having a great week, a great semester. Quarter ends tomorrow as of the recording of this video. That is tomorrow, October 23rd, is the last day of the quarter. So you will not be able to submit any late work after tomorrow because I can't do anything with it after Monday. So it has to be in so that I have time to grade it. So have a wonderful night, and I will see y'all back in class.